Hey guys, Terry Hay here again from Shock Treatment, back in the workshop, and this is part 2 of our fork seal video. We've spoken about why fork seals leak, and today what we want to do is go over the things that you can do to actually prolong the life of your fork seals and get a little bit more out of every ride. Now, as we said, the principal reason that fork seals are leaking is not because they're blowing, they're not actually destroying themselves, but the fork seals are being held open. And if you looked at our last video, I really dislike the use of these little wetsuit material covers that they put on there. They just trap dirt and they just rub that dirt up and down. And what we've got is we've got our fork tube that's been assembled, it's got new seals in it and everything. One thing we've left out is a little strip of foam. Now, this is just ordinary foam. You can get it from any rubber store or whatever. But basically it's about a 10 millimeter by 10 millimeter strip of foam, and we've cut this so it's around 160 millimeters long. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pop that dust seal down, install this in between the void between the oil seal and the dust seal, and what will happen is this will be a pre-filter prior to the oil seal. So your dust seal will actually get rid of 99.9% of dirt, and it'll keep your tubes relatively clean. But as we said, the forks do get stressed, they bend, and that relaxes the grip on the dust seal and allows particles to get by it. And so by placing this little filter, if you like, in between the oil seal and the dust seal, it'll catch any errant particles prior to them actually getting into the oil seal and creating further issues. This is the number one best thing that you can do, better than anything else that I've found. And you know what, it is so cheap. So yeah, do yourself a favor, install a little bit of this, and Jake will show you exactly what we're going to do to put this in. And this can be done on the bike. You don't even need to take your fork off the bike, but we'll mount this in the vise and we'll show you what's going on. Okay, so here we have our alloy vice jaws. They're not going to do any damage. And basically we're just using a gasket scraper and popping that down. I don't recommend a screwdriver. You could use a fairly dull wood chisel if you like, anything with that little wedge shape to it. And so we just feed that in there. And then we're going to put the dust seal back in. And if you want to, you can take a plastic mallet and knock that in, but just as Jake did there, you can just slide that seal down and it will house itself. So that's it. Now we're going to look at buffing the tubes and a couple of other modifications that we can make. Okay, so we're going to get into some tube modification now, and it's very simple. We're just going to drill some holes in there. And but one thing I forgot to mention was we always coat this with a little bit of WD-40. So when you're putting that foam in there, a little bit of WD-40, and that will do two things. First of all, it'll help any dust stick to the foam and it won't go any further, but it'll also prelude the fork leg. We spoke about if your fork legs dry out, well, by having a little bit of oil on there, it will basically prelude the tube, and you'll find everything will move very, very freely, and we're less likely to harden the seal lip through burning. Now, one of the things with the oil, as I said, use WD-40. We have had people in the past try to put filter oil on this. Now, filter oil goes very, very tacky and will actually tear the foam apart. You'll end up with foam particles in your seal. Not what we want. Okay, in the previous video as well, we also spoke about drilling a hole in this chrome tube. Now, when we're going to drill a hole, it's very important that we drill a hole above the seal. We certainly don't want any holes below the seal, or our world will turn to shit. Now, the reason that we're going to drill this hole is basically to eliminate the pressure differential between the compression and the rebound phase of the fork action. Now, as we spoke before, we've got an upper bush and we've got a lower bush, and as that fork compresses, that gap rapidly expands, and because we've got an oil volume inside these tubes, and it's a very thin oil volume, it messes with us, okay? It creates an additional damping effect, but that damping is not as controlled as what we get on the main valves, and it also creates a massive vacuum on the compression phase, and that vacuum will act on the back of the seal, and it will help draw air in, and it will help draw dirt in. So by drilling a hole above where the seal normally sits. Okay, you want to make very, very good measurements here, and you want to make sure that the hole we're putting in is above the seal and the bush when the fork is fully extended. Generally, this will work out. A good location is about 170 millimeters down from the top of the tube. So you'll simply mark that. And one thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the hole that you're putting in is parallel to the axle. And by putting it parallel to the axle, what we'll find is that hole will be directly in the middle. This is very, very important, because if you're actually hitting a bump, basically as it hits that bump and it's trying to bend that tube, it will expand the material that's on the face of this tube and will actually compress the material that's on the back. Or if you have a slap down landing and it's trying to bend the forks up the other way, it will be compressing the material on the front of the tube and it will be expanding the material on the back. By having it directly in the middle, you're in the point of zero stress. Okay, so there's less chance that there's virtually no chance that that is going to hamper the fork strength whatsoever. Okay, so roughly 170 mils down, must be parallel to the axle, and you're good to go. So we'll move to the drill press. We'll drill a couple of holes in this, and very, very important that we deburr everything, chamfer the holes, and make sure you've got no garbage left inside your fork. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so here we are in the lathe room. We've got our 400 grit paper. We've mounted our tube up and we're about to buff the tube and put that crosshatch pattern in there. Now this is a very, very important phase, and this is something that will avoid repeat seal leaks. As you know, we've spoken about in the last video, you do get those vertical streaks where the sand or grit is actually marring the tubes. You can get roost on the tubes, which will create little nicks, and those nicks actually push up little high spots, and those high spots will cut the new seal if we just put that in without buffing the tube. So we've had people come in and they've had their fork serviced elsewhere, and then they've gone out and they leak straight away, and they come back, they get them done again, they leak again. Well, if you're not doing this step, there's every chance that you're going to have repeat failures. And it's just like getting a flat tire and not pulling out what's caused the flat. So if you've had a thorn or a nail in your tire and you don't address that and you just put a new tube in, it's going to go flat again. So we're going to buff this at a fairly low speed. We're starting off with 400 grit paper. As you can see, we've got the boot off this tube. We don't normally do it without the boot on, but the boots are being Cerakoted and coloured, and we are going to send this out and have it treated as well. But basically, if you've got the boot on there, just be very mindful that as you're buffing, you don't smack your hand into the boot. It will be rotating. It can cause a lot of drama, particularly the brake leg. If we're going to basically buff the tube and it's got the brake leg on there, we will physically put a little holder there and keep our hands away from the brake caliper or the caliper mount. Okay, now one of the things we want to do is get a really nice pattern on this tube. And a very, very easy hint is just put a little bit of moisture on there. This is just a bit of cutting compound, okay, cutting lubricant. And so by putting that moisture on there, we'll get a visual indicator as to the angle of our crosshatch, and it makes it easy to get a really nice finish. Okay, put that on. Basically put our paper in place, and you can see the angle that you're getting there. Don't put your hand into the lathe. Clearly the main area that we need to address is the working area of the seal. So we've got 300 mil travel of forks in your forks. We're basically addressing about 450 mil, so we're well and truly covering that working range, and we'll have a nice fresh surface to put our new seal on. Okay, so here we are, we're about to drill this hole, and basically we've marked the tube in the correct location, and very, very important that we've got our hole lined up with the center of the axle. Okay, so we want these two things parallel. As I said before, this is going to put the hole in the point of the least amount of stress. Now, what I've done here is I've actually installed a center drill. And once we've got this hole marked, basically we're going to use the center drill to initiate the hole. The reason I want to use the center drill is there's less chance of the drill actually wandering and going off our mark. And so by doing this, we'll make our first hole, and then we're going to switch it over. We'll put the new drill in there. The drill will be a 5mm drill. And once we've gone through the tube, both top and bottom, we will then put a larger drill in there, and we will put a slight chamfer on there with a larger drill, and then we'll clean that up with wet and dry so that we have absolutely no burrs. And we will run a file down the center of the tube and make sure we deburr the inside of the tube as well. So very, very simple process. This can be a bit of a bear to drill, so I like to use Cobalt drill bits. The Cobalt drill with a flat pitch gives you a really nice cut. Okay, so if you don't want to use a larger drill, you can use a countersinking bit and just clean up the holes, the edges of the hole with the countersink bit. But a larger drill works just fine. And after you've done that, once again, go over it with some wet and dry. Get your thumb in there and really take the edge off that hole, and happy days, you're good to go. Okay, so that just about wraps us up. We've put the strip of foam in there. Very, very easy mod to do and super, super effective. I cannot bloody praise this mod enough. Okay, it costs you nothing, and it will be your biggest friend. Now, beyond that, we've put the hole in the tubes. Awesome modification if you're up for that. Works really, really well. And when we first brought that out in '96, you know, I had customers who had habitual seal leaks with the '96 forks. But after we did that mod, we had people say, man, I never had another seal leak again, and my bike worked unbelievably well. So certainly worth doing. It doesn't cost very much. If your tuner charging more than $50 to do it, I'd find another tuner. With the cross hatching, like I said, very, very important. Just like pulling that nail out of your tyre before you put a new tube in it. And you are going to find that you're going to wear those tubes. So it takes off any rough spots. Works really, really well. The next thing beyond that is the forks are designed to work at atmospheric pressure. Those little bleeders that you can buy, great thing. Okay, so just before you go out for your ride, just push the bleeder and let that excess air out, and you'll have the best ride quality. If you're going to mount your bike on the trail and you're pulling the bike down, basically just hit that button and it restores the forked atmospheric pressure, and it takes all the headaches away from the seals, and so they will have their best life. So these fork seals have become the scourge of the modern motocrosser, or the scourge of the modern dirt bike. But there are things that you can do, and if you put all these modifications into play, you'll find that you have a much, much happier riding life. Okay, thank you, good luck.